Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this August 28th, 2023 episode. Music to our ears. Labor Day is upon us. We played college football this past weekend. As you know, week 0, we had an SEC game, so you know what that means. It's an SEC game review for us here. In case you're living under a rock, you didn't know it was week 0, you missed the Vanderbilt Hawaii matchup. Yeah, a little bit of a delay, but still, fun matchup. Probably wouldn't say it really got Vince Lombardi real fired up from 6 feet under, but a little bit of an ugly game. But hey, it's first game. We'll get into that matchup here in just a minute. But it's officially week 1, and we will have 2 more SEC matchups here within the next 72 hours. I mean, obviously, Utah, Florida making the trip to Salt Lake City to face Utah, the return trip from last year. Then South Dakota State versus Missouri kicking off Labor Day weekend, week 1 on Thursday night. No special guest today. As I wanted to get in some more of my typical Monday segments we're going to do as the season gets underway. But on Wednesday, and with that being said, the episode, we're going to do the second episode this week on Wednesday. I got to go out of town for a family beach trip that we do Labor Day weekend. So I will be here Wednesday and give you final predictions for this week's matchups, week 1. But with that being said, on Wednesday, we will have a special guest, Jake Hatch from the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, will come on. We'll discuss the Utah-Florida game. He has a pulse on the Utah program and also a BYU program. Arkansas plays BYU in a couple weeks, so we'll ask about that. But really, he's going to come on the night before the Florida-Utah matchup and break down that matchup for us, talk a little bit. We're going to see a little Cam Rising. I mean, coming off the ACL tear. How's Keithy, the tight end? How's he going to be? Are we going to see him? Jake will join us Wednesday's episode. Kind of be he's got boots on the ground in that area in Salt Lake City, so he will be a good source to get on and kind of get a feel the night before the matchup that nobody really thinks Florida's going to win. I mean, the line's gone up a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit. More people are a little bit more confident in Florida now, especially with the Cam Rising. Some people being a little bit hesitant to think he'll play. But for also, we got first week of SEC power rankings. And spoiler, Vanderbilt does not come in at number 1. I've seen some people have Vanderbilt at number 1. No, not from these trained eyes. That's not the fact. I'll give it to you, though, but I promise you, spoiler, Vanderbilt is not going to be number 1. Then we'll talk some positive and negatives. Speaking of Vanderbilt, from the Vanderbilt Hawaii game from Saturday and where this game was won and lost. We'll pull up the film to show you where this game was exactly won and lost for Vanderbilt and Hawaii. Then we'll review my week 0 bets, talk a little bit about some of my favorite week 1 lines I'm liking right now from the SEC. And then finally, we'll go over one thing I want to see from every SEC team as we're heading into week 1. I'll go through all 14 teams and tell you what I want to see week 1. Some will be in detail, and some I don't think we're going to be able to learn a lot. Just off the top of my the Georgia game, I don't think we're going to learn a lot against Georgia against UT Martin. I don't think we're going to learn a lot about Arkansas, Western Carolina. I don't think we're going to learn a lot about either one of those teams, Arkansas or Georgia, not in a bad way, just for example, that'll be one. Obviously, we're going to break down Florida, Utah a little more than that. But first, let's get to around the SEC. Florida moving up their travel due to the tropical storm that is hitting the Panhandle this week. Florida will not leave Tuesday. They are planning on leaving Wednesday. Sounds like Billy Napier got in with a bunch of NFL teams and kind of sought to see how they're training. Probably some of these East Coast teams when they travel west in the NFL, how that affects their play. I saw an interview with him. He said after talking to a bunch of people, it just seemed like, hey, let's keep our normal business attire. Let's keep it. Hey, we're going to go the day before. He said something like for you to really get the full effect, or without your players getting the real, for them to get there and have a real impact, how early they get there to have a real impact, to be like 10 days out. They'd have to have like 10 days out to determine for it to really have effect on the body, where it's like it doesn't. At some point, though, I mean, the altitude, traveling, I mean, they're traveling back one time zone, it's not going to be that bad. These are college kids. It's going to be hot. And the altitude, it's going to be hot. It's early in the season for everybody. It's going to affect Utah. But interesting, they're moving it up. It's more towards the storm. I thought they would be going Tuesday anyways, no matter what. But I guess the tropical storm pushed them up. But interesting, Billy Napier taking that approach, going to see how that really affects. I don't think he's going to have much of a say on the game. But again, he said it's not really worth going out there that early unless you could go almost 2 weeks out, which obviously they're college kids. That's not going to happen. But Florida moving up their trip. Then you got Ole Miss, Mississippi State, football stadiums. Potentially are among 18 venues targeted by Congress for future preservation and modernization of efforts. Just reading here a little bit. The Congressional Historic Stadiums caucus, especially by co-chairmen Congressman Garrett Graves and Mark Pocan, was launched with intentions to update some of college football's most historic stadiums, many of which are 100 years old, and enhance their capabilities. Vaught-Hemingway Stadium and Davis-Wade Stadium, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, respectively, they fit into that. So be looking for a little bit of government money being sent over. Updates for Vaught-Hemingway Stadium and Davis-Wade Stadium. News for you if you're a Mississippi State or Ole Miss fan. Then Arkansas for this weekend has moved its game up against Western Carolina from 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone to noon Central Standard Time Zone. So a 3-hour difference. Sam Pittman and the boys moving it up. I believe the game was on the SEC Network Plus, ESPN Plus anyway, so it doesn't affect TV much. But just wanted to throw that out there for the Razorback fans. And then last, a little bit around the SEC before we get into the power rankings. A&M. For the longest, they had Power by Kanye as their come-out song. They're changing it, but no one knows. Well, I guess we'll find out against New Mexico on Saturday. But just another bit. So a little bit Florida moving the trip up. Ole Miss, Mississippi State getting some government funds to update both Vaught-Hemingway Stadium and Davis-Wade Stadium. Arkansas moving the game up Saturday against Western Carolina to a noon kickoff. Originally was at 3. And then finally, A&M. What song are they be coming out to? It's not going to be Power anymore. It's not going to be a little Kanye West. What have you done with all that power? It is going to be a new song. It'll be interesting. I think that goes back all the way to the Kevin Sumlin days, if I remember right. I think at the beginning of the Kevin Sumlin days they started that. So interesting. Sounds like the players had a lot to say about what song they're going to pick up, so it should be interesting. But moving to the Week 1 power rankings, some might say, hey, Dave, it's way too soon to do a power rankings. I don't think so. You may think some of these picks are crazy. Remember, this is split 1 through 14. We're not doing 7-on-7. We're not doing East versus West. I'm just throwing them in there as I think these teams stand right now heading into Week 1. This isn't going to match how I think these teams finish. So if you go look at the graphic I have pinned on my Twitter page, it's going to show my final SEC West, SEC East standings, playoff standings. That's not reflective of this. This is where we are on August 28, 2023. So let's get right to it. Coming in at 14th, the only team that's played a game. I see some teams had some other media outlets had them at number 1, but that's just because they played a game. I don't get that. But Vanderbilt, we'll get into them a little bit more, but coming in at 14th, a little bit disappointing again. We'll get into that review in just a moment or just a little bit. But I like where Vanderbilt's coming in at 14th right now. I have a hard time seeing them getting an SEC win right now. I really do. Coming in at 13th, I think they could have a potential to move up after this week. The Florida Gators. Again, tough to go off anything. They're going to have a lot of freshmen because I think the youth on that team is their most talented. I mean, their freshmen and sophomores are the guys who are the most talented on that team. They're going to have some guys step up, especially at wide receiver position. Like Florida sit there at 13th, Auburn at 12th. I want to see the run defense improve a little bit there from the Tigers. I think the offense is ultimately getting fine, but really on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, on the offense and defense. I want to see a little bit of that. So Auburn coming in at 12th, heading into Week 1. Ole Miss 11th. Again, I told you I'm not fired up about the depth on the defensive side of the ball for Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to be fine on offense. They can develop some depth behind Quinshon Judkins. We'll get to that in just a moment or two. And if Michael Trigg, the other tight end, the USC transfer from last year, if he wants to play a little football and be a good player, Ole Miss can move up some. I think they're going to be fine on offense. They haven't announced Jackson Dart as the quarterback yet, but I anticipate that happening. Sounds like Kiffin's going to play multiple quarterbacks like he did last year to open up the season against Mercer. But Ole Miss coming in at number 11th in the Week 1 SEC Power Rankings. We're just going across the state here to number 10, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I say it all the time. If Mike Leach was back, God rest his soul, they would be a fringe preseason top 25 team, anywhere from 25th to 28th. I think you'd be seeing Mississippi State. They got a decent bit back on defense if they can figure out the safety situation. Got some guys back on the offensive line. I think the system change, though, with Kevin Barbie could be a little bit of a transition. I know Mississippi State fans have gotten after my tail before on social media about that. We got 4 starters back, but there's different footwork going on there than in the spread. I mean, when you're pulling, running, counter and stuff that Kevin Barbie is going to bring, there's going to be an adjustment. But Mississippi State, they coming in at 10th. Want to see a little bit. Do they get off to a quicker start? I think that Arizona game could be a little tougher for them. But Mississippi State's got enough back just with a new coaching staff. Defense is going to be fine. Zach Arnett and that defense is going to be fine. It could be a little bit of a learning adjustment from an offensive standpoint. But I got Mississippi State coming in at 10th. Number 9, South Carolina. Both sides of the line of scrimmage concern me, but they do have a quarterback. The gunslinger, Spencer Rattler. I like what Spencer Rattler can do. I like him sitting there at 9. Real interested in the North Carolina game this week. That'll be played Saturday night, I believe 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone in Charlotte. at Bank of America Stadium. That's one of those toss-up games to me. The South Carolina and North Carolina game, you could come up, you could put numerous situations in a hat, pull it out, and I'd believe you. It's one of the bigger toss-up games of the week. I've gone back and forth throughout the summer. But I think right now, South Carolina sits there at ninth. Just both sides of the line of scrimmage concern me. Like, again, I like the quarterbacks. I like the receivers if Juice Wells is healthy. And I like some of the young cats in the back end. But South Carolina coming in at ninth. Missouri coming in at eighth. If they can figure the quarterback situation out, I've said it all summer. Watch out. Watch out for Missouri. I think they have a chance to get to 8 wins. They really do. I like them against Kansas State early in the season. But Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, and then will kick off against South Dakota on Thursday. Quarterback, it's going to be a big play. It's going to be big. There's weapons on the outside. Theo Weiss, Luther Burden. Got running backs. Eli Drinkwitz said it's the deepest offensive line he's had. They got the most returning production back, I believe, on defense in the SEC. Missouri, if they can figure out a quarterback between Brady Cook, Sam Horn, or the Miami transfer Jake Garcia, they should be pretty good. So it's where I like Missouri coming in at 8th. Number 7, Arkansas. It kind of fits mid-tier right there. Some Arkansas fans, I think they're going to go win 9 games. I think there's going to be a bigger adjustment than most think from the transition between KJ Jefferson and Dan Enos. Don't put too much on KJ Jefferson's plate. I'm just telling you. Defense, I think, is going to be better. Just they can't be. The secondary can't be any worse. It can't be any worse than it was last year. They should be better. They're at least going to be playing with an edge, playing with their hair on fire. So look for Arkansas coming in at number 7. 6, I'm high on the Kentucky Wildcats, but I got them 6 right now. It's all going to come down to the big blue wall. Kentucky's kind of got an easy path to start off. They have a couple games where they can work those kinks out on the offensive line. I like Devin Leary. I think it's the best wide receiver group Kentucky's ever had. Ray Davis, the Vanderbilt transfer, the running back transfer from Vanderbilt, rushed for 1,000 yards behind that same offensive line from Vanderbilt that struggled to get pushed against Hawaii last week. Was it Ray Davis? Was he that big an impact for the Doors? I don't know, but he's playing in Lexington now. But I like the Cats. I like what they're going to do. Defense is always good enough to go win 7-8 games. I think Devin Leary, Liam Cohen, the wide receivers, push them over the edge to get 9 wins this year. I like them at 6 right now, heading though, as we speak today on August 28th. Again, going through my SEC power rankings, week 1 as of August 28th. Don't go look at my end of the year predictions. This is where we stand heading into week 1, in my opinion. Coming in at 5th, Texas A&M. Some kind of I have to see it to believe it mentality. Not really kind of I'm the first one in the pool mentality. People want to see that. They want to weird analogy, but it kind of fits right in there. Some people just, I don't want to dip my toe in the water yet until I kind of see some other people get in there and they tell me it's not too cold. People want to see it with A&M before they go out on a full limb there. I think A&M, they can go win the SEC West just like Alabama and LSU. The recruiting talent, the personnel is caught up to them in a good way. But right now, a little nicked up from what I hear inside of the Bright Complex over there in College Station, but I think they're coming in just right after LSU, but I got A&M coming in at 5th. Speaking of LSU, coming in at 4th. Depth on defense concerns LSU, but I think this is for sure a 9-win team for LSU, at least a 9-win team. They have to stay healthy on defense. And they could go defend their crown in the SEC West. I just think this may be a year. This is right now. I like LSU coming in at 4th. It'll be interesting to see how much they go back and forth in my power rankings this year, week to week. But LSU right now, I go back on that Florida State game too. I got 2 days to come up with my final predictions since we're moving the Thursday episode up to Wednesday this week. So I'll be working on that late tonight. I just go back and forth. I kind of have a feel right now. But LSU, I just feel like they're going to drop a game or two you're not anticipating. I think Florida State's got some matchups that LSU can't really hide. But I like LSU, the defending SEC West champs. Brian Kelly coming into his second year, coming in 4th in the SEC in their power rankings right now. 3rd, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Word is the defense is going to be the best we've seen in a while. We'll talk about that in a little bit on one thing I want to see from every SEC team heading into week 1. Is Alabama made that big of an improvement on defense under new DC Kevin Steele, replacing Pete Golden, who's now at Ole Miss? As we all know, everybody's worried about the quarterback situation. I think Alabama's offensive line in the run games would be pretty good this year. A little bit wide receiver by committee. I have them winning the SEC West. I think they're a little better than people are anticipating right now on August 28th. But again, they don't have to be at their best this first weekend, second weekend, third weekend, fourth. As long as they continue to get better, as long as I've been vocal. I don't know if Alabama beats Texas in week 2. I don't know. I think maybe the conference's longest home winning streak may come to an end next week. My preseason prediction was it would happen. I think Alabama's a little bit better than people think. I think it's more of a wishful thinking that the dynasty's dead. I haven't won in the SEC West, just missing the playoffs by a game. But I like the Tide coming in at number 3 right now, talking to people over there. And number 2, Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to come out firing. I love them this week against Virginia. I think that's going to be a beat down in Nashville. I like Tennessee, a veteran squad on defense. Again, they were not as bad on defense as people thought last year. I think they only ended up giving up 24 points per game. Josh Heupel would take that every year. This is a team, I keep mentioning, 32 seniors on this roster. You talk to people over there that know football, they say it just comes down to Joe Milton. And according to people, Joe Milton has had the greatest maybe fall camp of all time. Now, no offense to the Tennessee media, but a lot of them are alums of the school and are major sunshine pumpers. No offense to any of those guys listening today, but it is. So you got to take a little bit with it with a grain of salt. But I've heard Joe Milton, they say Joe Milton hasn't even thrown an interception in fall camp. I think Joe Milton's going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be Hendon Hooker, though. So that's why I got Tennessee losing to Alabama, Georgia, and dropping a game to Kentucky. I don't think that's too crazy, but I think Tennessee is going to be hot rolling into the season. I think they're going to be 6-0 heading into Tuscaloosa. I'm calling it they're going to be 6-0. I mean, it's not too crazy. I mean, they got to win this game against Virginia. They're 28-point favorites. I think they go into the swamp and win. That game may be a little closer than people think because I think Florida's backs are going to be against the wall. Then Texas A&M comes to Neyland. I think Tennessee's going to be 6-0 when they roll into Bryant-Denny Stadium to try to get a streak going on the Tide. First time that had happened since, 03, 04, something like that. And then finally, number 1, Georgia. Injuries starting to mount up, though, starting to concern me. But if there was ever a year for you to have some early preseason injuries, it would be this year because the schedule. We keep saying it. Georgia's just going to be creeping under the sea. I thought they're going to creep until we start really, I don't know, depending on what Auburn's doing. If Auburn's undefeated heading into that Georgia matchup, I don't think they will be because they played Texas A&M the week before. I think they'll drop that game. But if they were to be undefeated, that'd be the first national game you would hear a lot about Georgia. That'd be the first time you heard a lot about Georgia. But I think if Auburn's a little struggling, worst case, go out to Cal, struggle a little bit, don't look good against Texas A&M, that game's not going to be juiced up or hyped up. It's just not. So I think the first time you may have you hear Georgia from a national perspective, maybe Kentucky, because I think Kentucky's going to roll into Sanford Stadium undefeated. But again, no one's really going to take Kentucky serious to go win that game. I think it could be close, but I don't think Kentucky's going to win that game. Georgia's going to be creeping. I mean, I saw on College Game Day, everybody on College Game Day last weekend picked Alabama to win the SEC. Some of that narrative bulletin board material, it's a little overrated, but Kirby Smart's welcome into it because he needs every type of motivation he can get because the schedule coming off back-to-back national championships, you got to have that internal motivation. He'll use some of that external motivation as he comes to. So the week 1 SEC power rankings for 2023, here we have it. We got Georgia sitting at number 1, Tennessee at number 2, Alabama number 3, LSU 4, Texas A&M 5, Kentucky 6, Arkansas 7, Missouri 8, South Carolina 9, Mississippi State 10, Ole Miss 11th, Auburn 12th, Florida 13th, and then Vanderbilt Commodores. The Vanderbilt Commodores, the only 1-0 team in the SEC, atop the SEC standings by wins alone. The Vanderbilt Commodores coming in at 14th. And speaking of the Vanderbilt Commodores, let's talk about Saturday's game. First, got a little bit delayed. I don't think they kicked off till around 8:10. I think they were supposed to kick off at 6:30. Vanderbilt got the 35-28 win over Hawaii. Hawaii returning that trip from the year before where Vanderbilt just put it on 62-10 or something. Just being honest, a little bit of an underwhelming performance for sure for the Commodores. But you're 1-0. That's all that matters. Hawaii, I think they were improved. Give Timmy Chang and his Hawaii Rainbow Warriors crew, they came in and played well. I think Braden Shager was really good for the Warriors. I mean, one of his, 5 incompletions on the game was just 2 interceptions by Ricky Wright. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But just some positives here, just off the top of my head for Vanderbilt. Offensively, they have skill guys. I mean, you got Will Shepard, Seth McGowan, Quincy Skinner Jr. They have enough skill guys to go win 6. They really do. A.J. Swan, I've said it here before. I think he is the highest upside from a Vanderbilt quarterback. Maybe Kyle Shermer, but we'll get into that. A.J. Swan, since Jay Cutler, the highest upside. If they can protect him, he has the highest upside since Jay Cutler, probably from a Vanderbilt quarterback. Some may argue Kyle Shermer, but I like A.J. Swan's upside here. And I thought on the other side of the ball, the defensive line was active, front 7, but it just needs to be more consistent. Their stunts, they looked like They need to be a little bit more cohesive from that standpoint. But again, those are some of the positive. The skill position guys, good enough to go win 6. The quarterback, A.J. Swann, easily good enough to go win 6. It's going to be about the offensive line protecting him. And I think the defensive front's going to be fine. I like Kane Patterson, the Clemson transfer, coming back home to play for the home city Vanderbilt Commodores. There were some positives. I know a lot of people on social media were bashing, but again, they're 1-0. I mean, you knew there'd be a little bit of a struggle. But the negatives, and there certainly were some. The offensive line and the run game have to get better. They average 1.9 yards per carry against an undersized Hawaii front. It's only going to get harder for Vandy. I mean, they should get a win against Alabama and A&M this weekend. If they can't run on Alabama A&M, woo! And this is a guy, I've been pumping it up. That was one of my favorites. I'm very confident. Vanderbilt's total win total 3.5 is what Vegas had as it at. Going into the season, that's a slam dunk. I mean, I think they'll still get 4. I mean, they should be 2-0 after this week. They just got to get 2 more after that. Their other non-conference games are UNLV and Wake. They need to go get one of those. They need to be 3-1 after non-conference and maybe go steal one against an SEC opponent. I don't know who that would be against because the other teams in the SEC haven't played yet. Coming to mind, I mean, where's Florida if Missouri doesn't get the quarterback situation figured out? I mean, what about that? I mean, Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is got to torch their secondary, though. Auburn comes to Nashville, depending where Auburn is. But again, right now, I don't like Vanderbilt getting a conference win. I predicted to go into the season they wouldn't. I had them right at 4 wins, but I was confident they would get there. I was confident they'd either be 3-1 in non-conference, still a conference win, or go 4-0 in non-conference and not get a conference win. I don't think they get 6. The offensive line and the secondary, and let's speak the secondary right now. As we expected, and we saw why no one was high on the secondary and why Vanderbilt's offense had so much success in the preseason against their own secondary. I mean, Stephen McBride, who we signed at Kansas, a kid from East Ascension in New Orleans, had 2 touchdowns. They're getting free releases against the line of scrimmage and running right by guys. It's bad. It's only going to get worse. I mean, Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss last year got drafted against Vanderbilt alone. Vanderbilt's been putting up – Vanderbilt's secondary is allowing massive numbers. I don't really know how you hide that. I mean, Hawaii and Timmy Chang put up 351 yards through the air and did it with ease. The Vanderbilt secondary is a concern, and I do not think they can get it figured out. I really don't. I really don't. But let's go. Let's share a little screen here and show you where this game was won. All right, if you can see the screen here. So the situation here, 3rd and 10, 2:35, as you can see, left in the third quarter. We're about to head into the fourth quarter here. Vanderbilt up right now. I think they were up 28-14. Hawaii's starting to feel themselves a little bit. If you watch the game, you'll probably recognize this play. But this is where it was won. A.J. Swann, I mean, right, again, I'm talking about the protection here. Right tackle just gets beat. Swann's running for his life. This is the play they thought he crossed the line of scrimmage in a legal forward pass, but he still had his right shoulder or left shoulder right behind, and he hits Carter there behind the line of scrimmage. He hits Carter there downfield. That was a massive play. Let's go back. That was a massive play for the Commodores, right? Because he got ruled as an illegal forward pass. They were about to pump back to Hawaii, and Hawaii was doing what they wanted to at that point. They were really feeling it. So this was a big play for A.J. Swann to create here, keep his eyes downfield, hit his receiver Carter downfield, making a big play. Again, if they don't make this play, that's a winning football play there. They went back and reviewed it. And this was massive for A.J. Swann to get this. Again, to run in for his life, having to make plays. If the pocket's clean, this kid has a chance to be really good. Again, I keep saying it. Highest upside since Jay Cutler. But, man, dude, they don't make that play. Their punt back to Hawaii's game might have been different. Remember, it came down to an onside kick. So I think that's where the game was won. Just let you see it one more time. This is what A.J. Swann can bring. I mean, keeping his head on a swivel, sees his player, knows he has to make a play downfield, just at the line of scrimmage, releases it just by inches. That's winning football, though. It's winning football. That's where the game was won for Vanderbilt. Going to the next play. Where this game was lost. Right here. So the situation. Hawaii just got the ball. Hawaii lost. This is where Hawaii lost the game. Not where Vanderbilt lost it. Obviously, they won, so they didn't lose. This is where Hawaii lost the game. 1st and goal. 1st and goal here. Why are you not running the football? You get your big back there just running it down Vanderbilt's throat on this specific possession. First and goal, 21-14 Vanderbilt, midway through the second quarter. And you throw this into Ricky Wright, just gets one of his first 2 interceptions. I don't really like the concept here either. I mean, this ball should be in the second row of the stands here. This is one of the few plays Schrager did not make a player. I mean, there's nothing. Nobody's open here. Not even that little traditional little rub route they tried to do. Vanderbilt, good play by their secondary there. Good eye discipline by everybody playing there. If you're Schrager, you got to put the ball away. I mean, what if they score here? We may be going into overtime. I know this is the second quarter. We still got a lot of football to go. Even if you're kicking a field goal there, yeah, I mean, it's a 4-point game at the end coming down to an onside kick that Hawaii almost got. You got 0 points on the board after getting down to first and goal, and you throw that. That's got to be 2 or 3 rows up in the stands. This is where the game was lost. This specific play. Going back, rewatching the game yesterday, this is the one that I was like, if you're Schrager, I'm sure Timmy Chang yesterday or this morning, depending when they got back from Hawaii, probably say, man, you just got to throw that one away, man. We got to get something here. It's first down. We got 2 more downs. And this isn't a great defense. We can score, I promise you. You got to throw that one away. There. Probably cost them overall. I know it's early. People like to say the late plays usually cost team games, but it's a 60-minute football game now. So this game, I think this play ultimately hurt them, and we're probably having a nitty-gritty down to the wire game, even more so than we even did from the previous game, than we did from the actual game it happened. I mean, if that play is not an interception, woo! Vanderbilt fans at Memorial Stadium with all the construction in the background, it may not have been a great night. I mean, Clark Lee even stated, we kind of got lucky to win that game. But again, Vanderbilt's 1-0. 1-0, and for my sake, I just hope the Doors get to over 3.5 wins. They should get it, like I said, win against Alabama A&M this week. Get to 2-0. Need to go split those UNLV games and Wake Forest games. And Vanderbilt's going to improve. They're going to improve. The offensive line's going to improve some. This is still the same offensive line that had a 1,000-yard rusher last year. I think it's going to improve, but it does have you a little concerned. If I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm a little fired up about Ray Davis. Is he the missing piece there? Because, again, they only average 1.9 yards per carry against a very undersized Hawaii defensive line. But just some final thoughts we get out of here. Like I said, the poorest play on the offensive line, I think it can be cleaned up to an extent. The secondary is what it is. I don't think it's going to get much better. I think they're going to get a lot of points and a lot of explosive plays against them come conference play. But I think Vanderbilt's going to improve. Like I said, I took the over 3.5 wins for the Doors this year. I still like them. They just need to split the UNLV, Wake Forest games. But Vanderbilt opens up week 0, 1-0, technically atop the SEC standings right now. But like you said, I told you early before the show started, I was going to go over a segment. One thing I want to see from every SEC team this weekend, we're starting alphabetical order in the SEC West. Alabama really starts on defense for me. I've heard a lot of guys have had big fall camps for the Tide. Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Deontay Lawson, an inside linebacker. And then defensive tackle Jaheim Otis has lost a good amount of weight and moving well. And I think this is going to be a good test for Alabama now. Middle Tennessee State, they won 8 games last year, beat Miami by 24. It wasn't a good Miami team, but still, you can play a worse week 1 opponent. They're going to spread Bama out, switch up the tempo. It's going to be a good test for Kevin Steele and his defense. It is. You will get a good idea how improved this Alabama defense really is. I want to see some physicality, but overall, some people are like, well, not the quarterback play, Dave. Well, I think Jalen Milroe is going to start. I don't think it's going to be that close. I think you're going to see probably 2 quarterbacks play. I think maybe 3, depending on how the score is. I definitely think you'll see Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Depends if we'll see Tyler Buckner. It depends how the game going is. But I think it's going to be a real test. Because, I mean, Middle Tennessee State and Rick Stockstill and the boys are not going to be coming in intimidated. Rick Stockstill has been at Middle Tennessee State for years. They've seen everybody throughout the SEC. They wouldn't beat Miami last year. Again, not a good Miami team. But still, there's one thing I want to see this weekend, though. It's the Bama defense's improvement from what you're hearing from fall camp. And it's going to be tested because Middle Tennessee State's going to throw a bunch of things at them. So, like I said, the defense is what I want to see from the Alabama Crimson Tide in week 1. Staying on that side of the ball, the Auburn Tigers, the run defense. I mean, UMass, Don Brown and the boys rolling in 1-0. 1-0 in the Jordan Hare this week. Not real worried about Peyton Thorne, Michigan State quarterback who Hugh Freeze named the starter. But I want to see the defense stop the run. It's the run defense improve. Is the run defense improved? I mean, last year, 6 games, half their games last year, teams rushed for 170 yards or more on them. That's not going to fly. They got to get to the top 50. I think that's doable. Giving up under 140 yards on the ground, I think that's doable. That should be improved for a Ron Roberts defense, the new defensive coordinator at Hugh Freeze hired at Auburn. The thing I want to see from Auburn week 1, some may say the offensive line play, and that's a close second, but I want to see the defense's physicality at Auburn. When Auburn's good, they're always good on the front 7. Always good. But even going back to when I was a kid, I mean, Quentin Groves, Stanley McGlover, then even when you had Gus Malzahn, Kevin Steele defenses there, you had Marlon Davidson, Derek Brown. When Auburn's good, they have good front 7s. That'll be the key to if Hugh Freeze can get up to 8, potentially 9 wins this year for a really good season for the Auburn. So I'm looking forward to that run defense for the Tigers. On Arkansas, I mentioned some a little bit, playing Western Carolina. I don't think you're really going to be able to learn a lot against the Catamounts. Let's crawl before we walk here, Razorback fans, so calm down. New defensive coordinator, Travis Williams. He's going to bring the energy. The defense is going to play with its hair on fire. They're going to play sideline to sideline. They're going to play for 4 quarters. And word is this is the best defensive line that Deke Adams, second-year defensive line coach Deke Adams has. A little continuity at that position, coaching spot for the defensive line for the Razorbacks. Word is this is the best defensive line they've had in about 5 years. We'll see. I don't think we're going to learn a lot, like I said, against Western Carolina. But I'm just interested in the defense's mentality. They always played a little bit back on their heels this year. They're going to be on their toes, flying around, hitting people. I don't think there'll be some elite crew. Just want to see a little bit more effort. I think, like I said earlier in the show, the secondary is going to be improved. It just has to be. But just keep an eye out on the Arkansas defense. Remember, that game got moved up to noon Central Time Zone. LSU, in one of the bigger matchups of the weekend, Sunday night against Florida State down in Orlando. I want to see a pass rush from LSU. I'm interested to see if guys like Savion Jones, transfer Ovi Ogufa, and then obviously when they bring inside linebacker Harold Perkins Jr. off the edge, who we know can get a pass rush, it's going to be key because Florida State has the matchup advantage at the wide receiver spot against LSU secondary. I think LSU secondary is kind of a makeshift secondary group on that back end, some mercenaries that hadn't really played together. Communication's key on the back end. And you got a guy like Sage Ryan playing the nickel position. That concerns me for LSU because he's not an overall great athlete that can run. I mean, Florida State's got real weapons. Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, the Michigan State transfer out there, they have some dudes. And then Jordan Travis, under the radar Heisman sleeper. And as we know, a secondary's best friend is a pass rush. And this game's going to come down to who makes the most mistakes between 2 good quarterbacks in Jaden Daniels and Jordan Travis. And the pass rush is going to have a big say for that for both teams. So I think this LSU, what I'm looking to see from LSU week 1, pass rush. Pass rush. Because you can't just sit back there and hope your secondary can cover. And not even the best secondaries can do that. But I think LSU secondary this year is going to be a bit of a weak spot for them if teams are able to take advantage of it. I think Florida State's got a massive advantage there at the wide receiver spot against the LSU secondary. But LSU's front 7, their edge guys, and if a Mekhi Wingo on the inside, I mean, quarterbacks, like you talk to them all the time, they would rather face the edge rushers than the guys who are getting put, instead of their center getting pushed back into their lap. Quarterbacks don't like people stepping on their feet now. Again, you would rather have, I'd rather if a guy's going to come flying off the edge, I can just step up in the pocket. But if my centers or guards getting pushed back in my lap, it's not good. So the pass rush for LSU has to come on, or it could be a long day for that LSU secondary. Ole Miss. Somebody say somebody on the defense. And I think it's a big question mark. And I think Mercer's going to show Ole Miss's defense and new DC Pete going some different looks. It'll be interesting to see Ole Miss adjust to that, how they handle that. But I think the big question mark is because I don't think we're going to see a lot of Quinshon Judkins because I don't think he's going to get a lot of carries against Mercer. But all offseason I've said, I'm concerned about Ole Miss's depth at the running back position after Judkins. I mean, does a Ulysses Bentley step up? Does Jam Griffin step up? Does one of the true freshmen they signed step up? I want to see the depth after they put this game away and Quinshon Judkins didn't play in a lot, probably from the get-go. I want to see the depth of the Ole Miss running back room. Because you can't just ride Quinshon Judkins again for 25, 30 carries a game. He's going to get worn down by season's end, especially when your first 2 games in conference are against that Alabama and LSU. So I want to see the depth against Ole Miss. Yeah, you have some questions on defense. I think Mercer will give him some certain looks. It could confuse Ole Miss potentially, but I would really want to see if they have any dudes after Quinshon Judkins in that running back room. So that's what I'm looking forward to see week 1 from the Ole Miss Rebels. Depth after Quinshon Judkins in the running back room. Heading across the state, Mississippi State. This is an interesting one. Playing Southeastern Louisiana, the Lions. Kind of lean. You know what I see? Just tight ends, man. I mean, just seeing a tight end on the football field at Davis Wade Stadium will be a sight for sore eyes. I mean, you hadn't seen that for years. I mean, they had to create position room meetings. Mike Leach didn't even have tight ends. I just kind of want to see him. I mean, guys like Rylan Goody, the Georgia transfer, Gravy Spivey, the TCU transfer. I'd be interested to see those guys in Kevin Barbie's offense. The Lions defense from Southeastern should not really be much of a challenge. I know it's a new system, but still, you should be able to you should just keep watching for the first half. I think the second half could be a little bit of a snooze, but they're just not going to. Zach Arnett and Kevin Barbie just are not going to show a lot in the second half. I think you got Arizona the next week, then LSU. They're not going to give away too much, but it will just be interesting. Maybe just from a body type, certain guys. I mean, they need some guys like Kendrick Griffin to step up. They need some other outside weapons, not just the tight end. So overall, I'm interested to see week one from Mississippi State. What are their outside weapons in the passing game going to look like? What are the outside weapons on the passing game between the tight ends and wide receivers? What are they going to look like? So that's what I'm looking for week one from Mississippi State. And then finally, to wrap up the SEC West, Texas A&M, it's run fits for me. They kick off their first game against New Mexico. Run fits are going to make or break the front seven for the Aggies this year. I think the personnel changes will make this group better equipped to play the run, in my opinion. A&M should be a solid B-gap to B-gap team this year. I'm just interested to see if guys are fitting the run gaps well. That's what I want to see. DJ Durkin, your second year, let's improve. Because I think I'm not really worried, like I've mentioned, I'm not worried about the A&M offense. I'm worried about the defense, and specifically trying to call the perfect defense against a certain package they see on offense, trying to call the perfect play to fit the perfect play, as some would say. But run fits for A&M is what I want to see, how that front seven fits the run gaps there against New Mexico to open up the season for the Aggies. Heading to the SEC East, another big one. Florida at Utah on Thursday night. We're about 72 hours away. Extending drives is going to be key for Florida here. Extending drives. As you know, Cam Rising, the quarterback for Utah, questionable, still coming off that ACL injury he suffered at the end of the year last year. And the backup quarterback, fall camp, had a lacerated spleen. So Utah's going to be playing with a third-string quarterback here. Bryson Barnes, I believe is his name. But it's not going to affect Florida. In a positive way, it should. But the key I'm looking for is Florida on the offensive side of the ball with new starter, Wisconsin quarterback transfer, Graham Mertz. It's going to be the whole offense in general. I mean, the offensive line need to get pushed early and often and set Mertz up for success in third and short situations. And if Florida's got good running backs, man, Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne are good running backs. If Florida's offensive line can get pushed early and often, that's going to lead to having extended drives. And that's what it's going to come down to. I want to see Florida continuing to convert on third downs. I want a high third down conversion percentage for Florida. But that's going to start on first and second down. I want to see Florida continue to extend drives in a tough matchup. I mean, it's gotten a little easier. Cam Rising, I mean, like you said, we're going to get somebody. We're going to bring on our guy, Jake Hatch from Salt Lake City, covers Utah and BYU from KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City to come join us on Wednesday. We're going to get him to come break that down, his feel on if Cam Rising will play or not. We'll get a better feel after Wednesday's episode. But just extending drives on offense for me is something I want to see Florida do heading into week one. Georgia, for me, it's Carson Beck. Georgia opens up against UT Martin and the Skyhawks. Just generally interested to see how he looks in meaningful snaps. I'm high on him. I think he could be an under-the-radar sneaky pick to be in New York at the beginning of December. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Heisman ceremony early December. How does he command the offense? Does he look comfortable? Is he hitting the gimme plays, throws? I mean, what's kind of his relationship? What's the feel with him and new OC Mike Bobo? I mean, hell, does he show emotion when they score and make big plays? I don't know. I mean, you haven't really seen him in any meaningful snaps. This one was a layup, but I think it's the honest truth. We haven't really seen a different quarterback at Georgia outside a little bit of JT Daniels since 2019 with Jake Fromm. I mean, it's been the Stetson Bennett show here for really the last 2 years. Want to see Carson Beck and Mike Bobo, see how that relationship is, how effective the offense will be against obviously a much lesser opponent in UT Martin. But what I want to see from Georgia is that first week is it's QB1, man. It's Carson Beck. Moving to Kentucky, everybody knows I'm high on the Wildcats this year. And their whole season comes down to the Big Blue Wall, and that's what it is against week one in their matchup against Ball State. The whole season, like I said, is going to come down to this group. I just need to see some continuity out of this group. It's game one, and I know it's Ball State, but you should be able to see some kind of improvement if there is, and there needs to be. I mean, how does Northern Illinois transfer Marquise Cox look? looks like it's going to allow – it looks like he's going to be manning that left tackle spot, which is going to allow Kenneth Horsey to move back inside to the left guard spot, which should help the Kentucky offensive line because that's where Horsey's upside is, that left guard spot. Right tackle will be key here too. That's something to keep an eye on here with USC transfer Cortland Ford. So 2 transfers in Cortland Ford from USC and then Marquise Cox transferring over from Northern Illinois. They'll be key to if that Big Blue Wall can get back. And if they're good, watch out Kentucky. Like I said, best wide receiver room they've had in a while, maybe in Kentucky's history. I think Devin Leary's going to be that dude. And Liam Cohen come back. And the defense with Mark Stoops and Brad White are always there. Always there. They're going to be playing up to par to go get Kentucky anywhere from 7 to 9 wins. But week 1, probably just like most people out there, I want to see what the Big Blue Wall and the offensive line unit looks like against Ball State in week 1. Missouri getting things kicked off on Thursday. We talked about it a little bit. South Dakota, I think it's going to come down to quarterbacks. Again, this is another one, just like with everybody probably saying in week 1 they want to see Kentucky's offensive line looks like. The same with Missouri. People want to see what the quarterback looks like. Or the quarterbacks. I mean, Eli Drakewitz has already came out and said there's going to be multiple quarterbacks playing week 1. He said that last week. I mean, could it be all 3 of Brady Cook, Sam Horn, and Jake Garcia, or could it just be 2 out of the 3? I lean maybe probably just 2 out of the 3, depending how the game is. I mean, yeah, I could see where all 3 for sure could be playing just because South Dakota is not a good football team. This isn't South Dakota State, guys. It's South Dakota. 2 big differences. But I look for Brady Cook ultimately to win this job. But again, they can get solid quarterback play. Look out for Missouri not to go contend for these, but go win 8 games. I like them early in that matchup against Kansas State at home. But again, what I'm looking forward to see Missouri on Thursday night is how do the quarterbacks look? Because that's going to be key. It's going to be the telltale sign of how successful Missouri will be in 23. South Carolina, I told you they're a real toss-up game for me week 1, heading to Charlotte to play North Carolina. But it's going to come down to the offensive line and run game. I think South Carolina is going to have to establish a run game if they want to beat North Carolina. I'm not talking about averaging 5 yards per pop, yards per carry. It just has to be in the 3.5 range to keep a Gene Chizik in the North Carolina defense just honest. Like I said, now North Carolina's not great on defense, but if they can pin their ears back and come after Spencer Rattler and not respect the run at all, I don't think South Carolina's going to score enough to win this game. Right now, again, this is Monday, August 28th, and I've gone back and forth all offseason. Kind of like South Carolina right now, but it's all going to come down to that run game. And remember, it's not like that. It's kind of the opposite of Florida. Not opposite. I mean, Florida's probably got a better situation in the run game right now than South Carolina. I mean, they actually have running backs in Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, but they're replacing 4 starters. South Carolina just has not been a good unit up front since Beamer's been there, and they lost their best running back from last year, Marshawn Lloyd, who transferred to USC, who actually looked good in week 0 against San Jose State. They just got Juju McDowell and the Newberry running back, I think, Mario Anderson. So, yeah, I just don't see a lot of dudes in the backfield paired along with a so-so offensive line group. I don't know. They're going to have to get that running game going. So I'm real interested in that offensive line and just the run game in general for South Carolina heading into their week 1 matchup against North Carolina. I want to see something there out of the Gamecock offensive line. Tennessee, we mentioned it. Their matchup Saturday morning against Virginia in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe Milton. You talk to anybody in the building, anybody in Knoxville, the season's going to come down to Joe Milton. I think Tennessee comes out hot. I mentioned it. I think they're going to roll into Tuscaloosa 6-0, trying to put 2 in a row in the title on October 21st. The key to how good Tennessee will be, though, for the entire season 23 is going to come down to Joe Milton. Reports out of Knoxville again. He's been flawless through fall camp. I want to see that translate over to the first game at Nissan Stadium in Nashville against Virginia. The line right now is minus 28. I'm telling you, I think I have a feeling Tennessee's going to go put it on in week 1. I think Joe Milton comes out with a big week 1. And I'll talk a little bit about them towards the tail end of this episode. But again, the key, what I want to see is just Joe Milton. People be like, well, Joe Milton, Dave, you saw him against Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Well, Clemson had some guys out. It's a totally new season. It's his team now. This is game 1. This is his team now. There's nobody, even in Heupel's first year in 2021, Hendon Hooker was always kind of breathing down his throat. And obviously, Hendon Hooker ultimately took over that job after the Pittsburgh game that they dropped in Heupel's first year. But Joe Milton doesn't have any pressure. Nico Lamalave is going to be a great player. He's going to be the starter next year for Tennessee. But it's not his job to go take from Joe Milton. This is Joe Milton's team. And I think Joe Milton knows his team's going to – if we win a championship or not is going to be determined by me. It all starts week 1, Saturday morning in Nashville against Virginia. Be watching Joe Milton. Then finally, Vanderbilt, the 1-0. Already sitting 1-0, trying to get 2-0. with Alabama A&M coming to town. If Vanderbilt doesn't get a push, and it's going to come down to the offensive line, I want to see week 1, game 2 for Vanderbilt, the offensive line go establish some physicality. If you can't run and you're only averaging 1.9 yards per carry against Alabama A&M next week, it's all bets are off. The over/under 3.5 win total for Vanderbilt, it's all off. I mean, like I mentioned, was Ray Davis, the running back who rushed for 1,000 yards last year with pretty much the same offensive line. And I know Vanderbilt was kind of up in the air about their offensive line. And at a school like Vanderbilt, you're always going to be. But was Ray Davis that big of a deal? Because if that's the point, it kind of defies the running backs at dime a dozen sometimes. But Ray Davis is at Kentucky. Was he that big of a deal? But for Vanderbilt, what I'm going to be looking at for week 1, I'm anticipating them to be 2-0 after week 1. I just want to see some improvement from the offensive line because it was not good this past Saturday against Hawaii. But I hope you enjoyed that. Just some week 1 things I want to see from all 14 SEC teams. Just reviewing some bets. Went 2-2 this past week 0. We're not proud of that. But it could be worse. Give us about week 3, 4. We start watching some film. That's when you need to be locked in. But again, 500. I'm not too upset. We should have been 3-1, but we hit on all the over-unders this week. I mean, our wins. Notre Dame here at Mock 10 Sports, the Notre Dame Navy under 49, that hit. The over 55, Vandy and Hawaii, that hit. My losses were giving up 16.5. Vandy giving up 16.5 against Hawaii. Lost that. Vandy only won by 7. Then USC minus 18.5 in the first half. USC was only up 7, and I do not trust the defense anymore. I'm not betting on USC anymore. But 2-2 first week. Interesting how I got there, though. Like I said, my wins were the over-unders and my losses were the lines. But we got to get settled in a little bit. We got to be better this week. We're holding ourselves accountable here. Ran some extra stadiums. We're not happy with that. We're not happy with going 500, just being average. I'm calling a winning record this week. And you will see with my predictions on Wednesday. But here's some early gambling picks I like for this week. I mean, my season predictions, I had Florida losing this game. But with Utah rolling out a potential third-string quarterback, give me Florida plus 6.5. And I may take the under in this one too, but give me Florida plus 6.5 right now. I'm liking that. These aren't official picks. You'll get your official picks from Mock 10 Sports on Wednesday, but I like Florida plus 6.5 right now. I mentioned I like Tennessee minus 28 against Virginia right now. Again, not official, but I really like that one right now. It's a lot of points to give up, but I think Tennessee's going to come out rocking and rolling at Nashville this weekend, and I don't think Virginia's very good. Auburn, UMass. I like the over in this one, 52.5. I like the over in this one. I really do. I mean, UMass got a solid quarterback. Was it Famachan? The transfer from Clemson is now at UMass. UMass 1-0 now with Don Brown. It won't be good news for Auburn's defense if UMass is helping get into that 52.5. But I think ultimately UMass is the game will hit the over there for 52.5. South Carolina, kind of liking the minus 2.5 right now. The game that close, I'm going to take some points. I got them. Yeah, minus 2.5 right now. I kind of leaning that way. Minus 2.5, just a field goal. I like the Gamecocks. I also like the over right now, 64.5. And again, these are not official picks. This is what I'm feeling from looking at the lines last night. And then also the final one, Florida State plus 2.5 against LSU. This is the game I'm talking about where it's too close to cut. If you're giving me some points, give me the 2.5. So I split that down the line. I feel that way about both South Carolina and North Carolina, as well as the LSU Florida State games. So I'm just going to go 1-1. I'm going to take the points of Florida State and then give up the points to 2.5 and then take the over 64.5 in that South Carolina, North Carolina game as well. But these are not official points. We still got 48 hours to lock these in before I give them to you finally on Wednesday night's episode. But before we get out of here, somebody asked me today, what team are we talking about the most this time next week? Monday night after Labor Day, there's a college football game. I believe it's Clemson at Duke at Wallace Wade Stadium. So that could one of those teams could be the talk. But after Saturday and Sunday's matchups, the team we're talking about from the SEC this time next week, Tennessee, man. People are like, man, you're high on Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to look really good after week 1. I think we're going to be talking about Joe Milton and that Josh Heupel offense. I think we're going to be talking about the Thornton kid, the wide receiver, the Oregon transfer. Maybe even guys like Jabari Small, the running back. And Tennessee's defense, besides the Alabama game last year and the South Carolina game, Yeah, a little bit Florida game. That was one of Anthony Richardson's better games. Other than that, they didn't really get torched. I mean, they only ended up giving up like 24.5 points a game, or 24 points per game last year. It's perfect for a Joe. If you told Josh Heupel his defense is only giving up 24 points per game every year, they'll take that. Again, this is a senior-led team. Joe Milton going to come down to him. I think Tennessee is going to come out hot. I think they're going to be talking college football after week one, at least in the SEC. I think that's really going to be where people are going to be talking about. They're really going to put it on Virginia this week. That's probably out of the early gambling picks I like so far. It's the one I like the most, and that's the most points I'm giving up. 28. It's 4 touchdowns there. With the new clock rules, that could be a little bit. And just I was doing some math today before we get out of here with the clock rules. Just some quick thoughts on that. Really, they're only about 3.5, 4-minute difference between games from last year and the week 0 games. Remember, small sample size, but I did the math. If it stays on average from a week 0 produced from the amount of how long a game is, and I believe it was 3 hours and 24 minutes off the top of my head compared to last year, 3:27. So in the grand scheme of things, not a lot. But if you factor in, you're losing anywhere from 3 to 6 snaps offensively per team. So let's just go in the high end, 6. It's about 72. You add in 12 games, that's about 72 plays you're missing out on. So the offense by the end of the year is almost going to miss out on an entire – because most teams go anywhere from 70 to 80 plays offensively per game. Always remember going into Exos, rewatching the games, and it says the total amount of clips right there. Sorry, just thinking about that from working in my football days. But on average, that's an extra game missed out on. It's a whole extra game of offensive plays that teams are going to be missed out on. If the average of the 324 allotted time of a college football game in the small sample size from week 0. So, like, again, just wrapping up what I'm saying, I think the average games went this past weekend, week 0, 3 hours and 24 minutes. Last year, games were 3 hours and 27 minutes. So, again, not much difference. But when you factor in, that's 3 to 6 plays, go high-end 6 plays, go that by 12 games. That's 72 plays. It's almost an entire offensive game. Like, offensive amount of plays in one game. So these offenses are going to be, the numbers just aren't going to be as high. But again, we don't know that yet. Small sample size, but just wanted to, just off the top of my head, I remember going through that this morning when I was drinking my coffee, and I wanted to bring that point up. I wanted to talk more in depth, but we got some other stuff we had to talk about. But I just wanted to bring that up towards the tail end. So be thinking about that as we get more games played in week 1. Does it stay at that average of 3 hours and 24 minutes? Because if it does, we're missing out on about 6 plays. It's going to be a whole extra game of offensive plays that some teams are going to miss. Stats are going to be down. Some of these All-Americans or the Blitnikoff Awards at running back or Doak Walker Awards, the stats won't be as high as previous winners because, you're missing an extra 72 snaps. So we covered a lot on this episode, guys. We talked a little. It's week 1 here, baby. We reviewed Vanderbilt Hawaii. We gave you my week 1 SEC power rankings. We went through one thing I want to see from every SEC team heading into week 1. We talked reviewed my week 0 game when picks, went 2-2. We're going to be better this week. We're going to be better. And then just some early lines I like from this for this upcoming week. But again, the Wednesday episode, we're moving Thursday's episode up to Wednesday. We're going to get my my week 1 predictions, game 1 picks. All of it. We'll also, remember, have Jake Hatch from KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, come join us to help us preview the Utah-Florida matchup. It's here, guys. Week 1, we're 72 hours away from having Florida, Utah, South Dakota, Missouri. It's here, guys. One of the best times of the year. Look forward to see you Wednesday. You have a great rest of your week. Thank you for joining us here on this episode of Mach 10 Sports.